Okay, today we're going to dive into a story from the book of 2 Kings that is just such a powerful cautionary tale about temptation, opportunity, and, well, character. It's the story of a guy named Gehazi. He was the ultimate insider, closer to miracles than anyone, and yet his story ends in complete ruin. So let's explore why.
And really, this is the question that just hangs over his entire life, right? It's a question that echoes through history. What happens when your proximity to incredible, unbelievable power leads to absolute corruption? Gehazi's story, well, it gives us a particularly stark and unsettling answer.
All right, so to really get why Gehazi's fall is so tragic, you have to understand his position. This guy wasn't just some distant follower hanging out in the background. No way. He was the personal attendant to the prophet Elisha. I mean, think about that. He was living and breathing miracles, closer to divine activity than pretty much anyone else in the entire nation of Israel. His influence had like three distinct layers. First, he was Elisha's voice, you could say. He was the one identifying the hidden needs of people, like that Shunammite woman who longed for a son. He was also a trusted intermediary, a first-hand witness to God's power. He even got entrusted with Elisha's staff, the very tool of his ministry, and was sent to perform a healing. You just don't get more insider than that. You know, every story has that one turning point, that one moment where everything changes. And for Gehazi, it arrives in the form of a foreign general named Naaman. See, Naaman is healed of leprosy by Elisha, and he comes to pay for this miracle with an absolutely staggering amount of wealth. And right there, that's the moment the test begins.
Let's just try to wrap our heads around the scale of this temptation. First, Naaman offers 10 talents of silver. Now, to put that in perspective, a single talent was a massive amount, often weighing over 75 pounds. So 10 of those, we're talking about a life-changing sum of money.
But that wasn't all. On top of all that silver, he offered 6,000 pieces of gold. The sheer weight of this temptation is almost unimaginable, and it's all just laid out at the feet of the prophet Elisha, with Gehazi standing right there watching from the sidelines. So Elisha refuses the payment, right? He makes this powerful statement: God's grace isn't for sale. But for Gehazi, this isn't some big theological principle. It's a missed opportunity. He sees all that wealth, and the principal is just completely overwhelmed by the possibility of personal gain. And right there, that inner fracture, it becomes visible.
So, the crucial point is what Gehazi does next. He secretly runs after Naaman, lies in Elisha's name to get a piece of that wealth, and then he lies to Elisha's face about it. The consequence is immediate, it is severe, and it is deeply, deeply symbolic.
And this is the heart of the judgment. It isn't random, it's perfectly symmetrical. The very same disease that was just cleansed from the generous foreigner now afflicts the greedy insider. The miracle is completely reversed. The thing that Gehazi grasped for in his greed now defines him permanently.
Now, you would think the story ends right there, wouldn't you? A clear moral lesson. Greed gets punished. But this is where the narrative takes a really fascinating and, frankly, deeply unsettling turn. So he's now a leper. And in his culture, that means he's an outcast, totally excluded from society, a walking symbol of his sin. He has traded his insider access for a permanent mark of divine judgment. His fall seems total and complete. If that were the end, it would be a simple morality play. But the biblical text isn't finished with Gehazi just yet.
And here is the twist. A few chapters later, in 2 Kings 8, we find Gehazi, the leper, the disgraced servant, in the royal court, speaking directly to the king. He's retelling all the great miracles Elisha performed, the very miracles he was a part of before his fall. Somehow, he still has access. He still has a voice.
And this reveals a deeply disturbing truth that is maybe the most modern part of this whole ancient story. Gehazi's spiritual ruin didn't erase his social relevance. His wealth, combined with his stories of past glory, gave him this enduring visibility and access to power. He is the living embodiment of the fact that worldly success and inner corruption can absolutely walk hand in hand.
This makes Gehazi so much more than just a historical figure. Theologically, he becomes a timeless archetype, a pattern of behavior that warns every single generation about the dangers of being close to holiness without having it actually change your heart.
He becomes a forerunner to Judas Iscariot, another insider who walked with divinity but chose silver instead. He parallels Simon Magus, who saw God's power as something to be bought and sold. They all teach the same chilling lesson. A divine calling without personal character inevitably leads to corruption. Proximity to power is not immunity from temptation.
So what do we take away from all this? I think it comes down to this powerful idea. Gehazi's life wasn't defined by what he saw, but by what he chose. He had endless opportunities, but he lacked obedience. And his story leaves us with a really critical question for ourselves. When we are presented with a choice, will we see it as a test of our obedience or just another opportunity to be seized?